Live from Wendy's apartment in New York, it's the Wendy Williams Show at home. Now, here's Wendy.
Hello. How are we quarantining? How you doing? So, something horrible happened while we were all getting ready for our production today. We at Wendy. 4 a.m. Detroit. The glass breaks. Security is still sleeping at a compound behind a gate. Eminem's house. Yes, Marshall Mathers. So here's what happened. So there's this guy who looks too old to be a groupie, honey. I don't know what kind of life he's... Norman?
He looks crazy. For lack of a better term.
This man broke into Marshall Mathers' home. Marshall has security living with him, but they're all asleep. But Eminem himself, he woke up and he walked to the scene of the crime. Saw the man, called the cops. The man is now in jail. And you know what he wanted? He didn't want to steal anything. He didn't want a concert. He just wanted to meet Eminem. Fire security. Lock this man up. Give him a mental evaluation. They say this is all alleged, but I'm sure by now, if you look on your thing, you'll see more to this story. Anyway, let's talk about Harrison Ford. The man is 77 years old. All right. Now, that's not too old, but, he's under investigation for another plane incident. I thought the flight people stopped private planes from flying. I thought that it was only, big airliners with like 3 passengers flying right now, and or, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines flying. So last Friday, he crossed the runway while another plane tried to land. TMZ, thank you TMZ, got a hold of the air traffic controller. You've got to listen to this and listen good. Go ahead.
Can you hold short runway 25, traffic on the runway?
Crossing 25. 89 hotel uniform.
9 hotel uniform, get across that runway now. I told you to hold short. You need to listen up.
Excuse me, sir. I thought exactly the opposite. I'm terribly sorry.
What do you think of this? Norman, he shouldn't be flying.
No, he should not be flying. Not anymore. This is the 3rd recent time that he's had a plane incident.
In 2017, he almost crashed into a jet with 100 passengers on the jet. Like, he's supposed to be landing over here in the private area, and he's actually landing where the big airliners land. That could have been a real catastrophe. And all he could do was say, I'm sorry. And his wife, Calista Flockhart, I get it. The thing is that when they met, and they've been married for 10 years, Calista 47 years old, and he was 67 years old. And that's okay, if that's good for her. But now she's 57 and he's 77. Now, a lot changes in terms of one's, giddy up in those particular 10 years. Calista, grab your man, please. Stop being bored. I know that Harrison Ford money is good. I know you still have some of that money that you made back in the day. But Calista, it is now time for you to put on a wrap dress, go to court, and figure out what's going to happen. In 2015, her husband crash landed a plane on a golf course. Fortunately, no one was on the golf course, but that was one of those collector's planes. One of those planes you're not even supposed to be flying in. That should just be out in your backyard sitting there like for your kids to play on without flying. He broke his pelvis, he broke a hip, he like broke everything in his body and then recovered. and then got back in the plane and started flying again. Callista, do you care about your husband? Just asking. I want to talk to you about something, and it's very close to me. This whole meat plant thing is bothering me. The idea that the meat plants are in trouble, and I'm only speaking from what I know for fact. You know, I'm concerned for the meat packers. I'm concerned that the meat is rotting. I'm concerned that people are working shoulder to shoulder. I'm concerned that the healthcare is not good. My Aunt Elizabeth and Uncle Willie. Uncle Willie was a steel worker at a factory, and Aunt Liz worked at a meat packing plant. And this all went down in Burlington, New Jersey. And I never thought anything of it. You know, Aunt Elizabeth always walked around like a boss, and she'd come home from work. Like, we'd go down there, family trip. My parents would gather me, my brother and sister in the car. We'd go to Aunt Elizabeth's and Uncle Willie. They didn't have any kids, but they had a beagle. And my Aunt Pod lived there, who's Aunt Liz's mother. So it was the three adults and the beagle. And Aunt Liz would come home from the factory, and she'd have on that white robe, and she'd always have, first thing she'd do, she'd get herself a big pour of brown juice, light herself up a cigarette, honey. Look, she and Uncle Willie could smoke a cigarette in 2 inhales, okay? I loved them. They couldn't stand children, but they liked us. And they always encouraged, you know, get your education so you don't have to do what we do, and then dismiss us. It was so weird, but so loving and so family-like. And Aunt Liz would complain about her job, would literally work like 12 hours a day. She'd be exhausted coming home, but that glass of brown juice would give her new life. and she'd come in and talk about, like, some of the girls pregnant 9 months, about to give birth. Nobody cared at the factory, you know, the bosses. There was no health insurance. Nobody cared. They were just these workers who worked, and nobody cared. And I remember one day Aunt Liz came home, and it was a day that she'd invited us for a barbecue because she used to boost. Okay, we had the best ribs, the best scallops, the best chicken. We had the best stuff. And Uncle Willie would light that grill, and the whole neighborhood would light up with barbecue, and everyone would come over there. It was like the place to be. The joint was jumping. But Aunt Liz came home one day getting ready for a barbecue, and it was like nothing to her. She lopped off her finger on the line. Nobody cared.
That's terrible.
She had to go to urgent care, and they just basically wrapped it up, and she literally was holding on to this homemade thing while still playing cards, drinking brown juice. And let me tell you something about Aunt Liz and Uncle Willie, honey. She also had a stroke, by the way, one day.
Oh, no.
And had to go to urgent care. And all they cared about was for her to come right back to work. They didn't want her to take off. They didn't care. But I'll tell you, and her face was always lopsided after that. But she and Uncle Willie, it was the most interesting thing visiting them. I would like to talk to Aunt Pod because Aunt Pod had good stories. Aunt Pod was a slave. She was born on a plantation down south. Now, I don't know how many people watching right now have ever known a bona fide slave in their family. Her real name was not Pod. She didn't like the name she was birthed with. They were field workers, she and her mother and her father and the whole family. And they worked the field all day, and they were paid through food. It was Aunt Pod who explained why it is that a neck bone is so good. You know, don't be a snob to all that meat. You know, a tailbone is so good. This is why our people like chitlins, Wendy, even if you don't like chitlins. Aunt Pod passed away at 103 years old.
Wow.
She wore a bracelet that was a fork from the plantation. When I say I'm all day from Jersey, because I don't know Aunt Pod from being on the plantation, I just know her from, and she would tell me, if you cut my toenails and rub my feet, I'll give you the stories. And I would sit there and listen in wonderment, like, oh my gosh, this is real history. And what I say to you in conclusion is, if you don't know where you're from, sometimes you don't know where you're going. Thank you for allowing me to share. On another note, it's official. Joe will not be coming back to the US. Everything that he's ever wanted has been negated. He's not allowed here. It'll never happen. He'll never see his daughters wake up. The final appeal was shut down on Wednesday. He can't come here. His whole life now is in Italy. And that's the way it is. The girls are here. He's scared what kind of world his kids will live in without him. He couldn't help them grieve when Teresa's dad, passed away earlier this month. Teresa, I'm sorry to hear about that. I believe Joe, and I totally understand it, but Joe, you should have thought about all this back when you were up to fangs. But sometimes people just don't think they're going to get caught. And then you get caught. And now you're dealing with the deck that you've been dealt. Listen, I did not watch Housewives of Beverly Hills last night. But what I did notice about the Housewives of Beverly Hills last night over everything, because it seems like I'm always watching the same thing, is that everyone's hair looked really good, featuring Lisa Rinna. Are you serious? She had the highlights and then it was all tall and going back. And a lot of the girls had top knots in the old school, the matriarch of the Trump family, which would be Ivana. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, those girls were doing it. And Garcelle makes a perfect housewife. Teddy Mellencamp, everybody, invited the women to some sort of retreat. And she says, well, just take a look.
You said I offended you when I said I didn't care if you came.
Well, I thought it was a strange thing to say to the group. I did.
Honestly, I'm gonna make it really easy for you. Don't come.
Well, okay, maybe I won't.
Well, I said that I was happy I didn't have to come.
And I said I didn't want to
I
come.
was honest about it.
No, come on. She's about to cry.
No, I'm not.
I'm just pregnant, you guys. Cut me some slack.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm fine, you guys.
You're not fine.
No, I know. Please, if nobody wants to come, don't come.
coming.
I got my people there.
I want to come. I want to see what you're doing.
I know.
Eric is coming in.
Teddy, I'm sorry I grilled you and it was sassy in the car.
Enough.
Okay, big deal. Teddy says if you don't want to come, you don't have to come. To me, that's not insulting to me. That's saving me RSVPing or feeling weird if I don't want to go or if I become busy. I like that idea. I wouldn't feel offended at all if when Corona's over and I have a little, get together here, I would say to people, look, here's the date. Come if you're not busy. Don't come if you're not. But at least let me know 2 days before so I know how many, plates to put out, how much port wine cheese to get, how many neck bones. Whatever. Oh my God. So The R&B singer Mario is saying that he is the official king of R&B. I'm so tired of all this. There is no king. And Mario, you certainly don't qualify, but okay. He spoke to WGCI in Chicago. Take a look.
There's a lot of talk about who the king of R&B is. And
it's just ridiculous. If we really talking about just straight, pure skill, we're not talking about relevance. We're not talking about who puts out 100 songs a year. We're talking about give me a mic, you get a mic. If we just talking about that, there's nobody with me. I promise you. Like on everything, I put that on my grave. I put that on my undug grave. You heard? Nobody with me. I promise you.
Really? Bobby Brown and Jacquees have both said that they're the king of R&B. Jacquees, we love you, but you're nowhere near the king of R&B. We've talked about that. Bobby Brown. What about Keith Sweat? What about Babyface? I mean, we can go on and on with this comment. There is no king. Like, stop with the titles. Everybody sit down. You all have your own special lanes. You're all very special to us here at Hot Topics.